She darted her eyes around the yard again, and licked her lips, something I was recognizing as a nervous habit of hers.
He was waiting for me in the closet again, hiding there when I got into bed.
She paused then, with a reluctant look on her face, so I nodded, encouraging her to continue. I was far too curious now. She turned her whole body towards me then, and brought her knees up to her chest, hugging them tightly.
He came out when he thought I had fallen asleep, but I didn't. I saw the closet door opening, but I was frozen, or something. I couldn't scream, or do anything. All I could do was watch it all happen again.
She darted her eyes again, and started rocking slowly back and forth. I was completely mesmerized, and I'm sure my eyes were wide in anticipation.
He just attacked me while I was still lying in bed. And the next thing I know, I'm tied up in the closet, bleeding.
She grimaced, and rested her chin on her knees.
It's the smaller things you remember the best, you know.
She whispered in a thoughtful tone.
Like the way the smell of blood made me nauseous, but when I tried to vomit I choked because of the gag in my mouth.
She had a faraway look in her eyes. After a few seconds she seemed to snap back into reality, shaking her head a little, then meeting my gaze again. She shifted her head so her cheek was lying on her knees, and she was looking out at the river.
Anyways, that's what my dream was about. And it was worse because I was home alone.
She sighed. I was kind of stunned into silence for a moment, my head swimming with thoughts of closets, and blood, and vomit, and completely appreciating what Bella meant about remembering the smaller things. Bella's story was definitely, without a doubt, 13 shades of fucked up. It was nice to know I wasn't the only one. Possibly, Bella handled it better than I did, but she's only been doing this for a year. I've been doing it most of my life.
I'm sorry.
Bella's quiet whisper broke me out of my thoughts. I turned then, slightly fucking annoyed. I was going to snap at her for apologizing before I caught the sad look on her face. What are you sorry about this time? I asked, forcing the softest tone my irritability would allow. She bit her lip and turned her body back around on the bench.
I didn't mean to burden you with all my problems, I shouldn't have.
She replied, likely misunderstanding my thoughtful silence. Don't be stupid, Bella. I sighed, and snatched another cookie out of the bag on the table. You keep bringing me cookies and you can burden me all you want. I replied with a smirk. I mean, I couldn't let her feel bad about telling me her dreams when I'm dying to know about them anyways. Unfortunately, I could still see her skepticism, so with another heavy sigh I put the cookie back in the bag and rubbed my hands together.
Okay,
I said, slowly, bracing myself for the bullshit I was willing to go through to put Belle's conscience at ease. Would it make you feel better if I told you about the dream I woke up from today? I asked, forcing a tight smile. She turned to me then with a look of unadulterated curiosity on her face, and nodded.
Bella's point of view. I mean, it only seems fair. It's like he said last night, I showed him mine, now he'll show me his. And I'd stop feeling like such a freak. He was still straddling the picnic bench, running his hands through his hair in a frustrated gesture, looking everywhere but in my eyes.
I was in my room and I started getting dizzy.
He started, and then finally met my gaze.
Do you know how when you don't sleep for so long you get really fucking dizzy?
He asked. I nodded. I knew that feeling all too well. It's only that bad for me on weekends, when I don't have classes to sleep in.
So, I lied down to get some sleep, just enough to make it bearable. Do you know?
He asked nervously. Again I nodded. All understandable. Get to the good stuff. Instead he reached in his jacket pocket, took out a cigarette, and began smoking it. It seemed to relax him minutely, and I idly took a moment to appreciate the irony of the fact he smoked to ease his tension over nightmares that likely involved fire. I was partially wrong this time, however.
I dreamt of my mother.
He whispered, blowing out a long puff of smoke.
It was the night after my father's funeral, and I was alone.
He paused and frowned a little before meeting my eyes with a look of slight embarrassment on his face.
See, my mom used to hum to me every night before bed. It was the song All the Pretty Little Horses.
He sighed, and shook his head while rolling his eyes. I knew what song he was talking about. When I was in chorus in grade school we used to sing it. That was before I found out I had absolutely no singing talent. But I didn't tell Edward this, I just nodded for him to continue.
Anyways, she didn't come that night.
He looked down at the table and continued smoking his cigarette.
And I couldn't sleep without hearing it, so I went to find her.
He continued with his shoulders hunching in a bit.
She was in the kitchen drinking.
He turned to look at me then.
A lot. Like totally fucking wasted.
He shook his head and took another puff of smokin'.
She was crying, and she wouldn't even fucking look at me, just told me that I was going away. Told me she didn't want me there anymore.
He said the last part in a whisper, so low I could barely hear it. After a moment, he finished his cigarette, flicking it off the gazebo, staring at its retreating ember without meeting my gaze again. And then he shrugged, dismissing the conversation, and grabbed another cookie without looking at me again. My heart broke a little. Why would his mother be so cruel to him? I know how losing someone so close to you can change your personality, but surely that was no excuse to shun your own child. I wanted to tell him I was sorry, to tell him his mother seemed like an awful person, to ask him why she would be so heartless, but knew they were all the wrong things to say. So instead, I nodded, even though he wasn't looking at me to see it, and took a cookie and began eating it myself. We didn't say anything else for hours. We just sat there staring out at what was visible of the river through the dark, misty yard. It was a comfortable, thoughtful silence. Not awkward in the least. My mind was going over Edward's dream, and the story he had told me the night before. I'm sure he was doing the same of me. Eventually I could see the clouds lightening slightly, and with a glance of the watch I had stashed in my pocket, realized we had been in the gazebo for nearly 6 hours. I have to go get ready for school. I sighed, regretfully breaking the silence. Spending time with Edward, even in silence, gave me the strangest sense of comfort and security. He turned towards me then, looking almost as regretful as I did, and nodded. Tentatively, I stood up and stretched my arms over my head, while Edward followed suit, repocketing his pack of cigarettes and lighter. With a small smile, I grabbed the remnants of peanut butter Panaceas, and we made our way back to our homes. I felt embarrassingly forlorn about leaving Edward, until I realized we went to the same school, and I could see him all day long. I almost smiled to myself in the mirror as I was brushing my teeth, before mentally slapping myself for the 1000th time in 3 days. Alice was unusually quiet this morning. Likely still disappointed in Jasper's absence from the party Friday night. The ride to school was uneventful until we arrived, and she spotted Jasper getting out of a silver car. She was trying to look uninterested, and failing miserably when I realized Edward was getting out of the same car. He looked even more glorious in daylight than what little of it forked weather could muster up. Now I was the one trying to look uninterested. Yet another mental slap. Hood up, head down, I mentally chanted while getting out of the Porsche. Alice and I were cunningly trailing behind Edward and Jasper across the quad on our way into the school. Far enough to not be in hearing distance of their conversation, but close enough to notice the way Edward's bronze hair glistened in the meager amount of sunlight. I rolled my eyes at myself. I spent the first 2 classes wondering if it was okay to talk to Edward in school, wondering whether or not he would like that. On my way to 3rd period, I got my answer. He was walking toward me across the quad. The whole school was milling around changing classes, and avoiding me the way I liked. Edward was wearing that leather jacket, and black pants and boots. He had his book bag sagging down off one shoulder, and just generally looking like the poster boy for indifference. When he finally locked gazes with me, I sent him a tiny smile and slowed my steps near halt. It was a question. Is this okay? It wasn't. He openly glared at me with narrowed eyes and sped up his pace, whizzing past me and sending his wonderful scent swirling around me. I stood frozen in the middle of the quad for a moment, half because of the way his smell effectively blocked out all my senses, and half